Alright guys, so let's go over the brand new updated gameplay and build guide for the brand new buffed up Druid Pulverize build with unlimited ultimate. You can stay in Grizzly Rage, the dire WereBear 100% of the time. And I was telling you guys this is going to be absolutely amazing, and you can easily do pit 100 with subpar gear, and the build is going to be a little bit more tanky as well with some other changes. But the most important change that I wanted to go ahead and highlight was that the Pulverize damage got increased by 76%, which is pretty large when you compare it to any of the other buffs in the game. So we'll do some pit 100 gameplay, we'll do some lower pit, and then we'll also do some open world just so you guys get a variety of content. And the coolest thing about this entire build, it is essentially going to be a 2-button build in terms of how we are going to be playing. It's pretty much actually like one. You just spam Pulverize. Now, if you do get hit by a CC, that's when you can activate Trample, and it does give you some mobility, but it is by far one of the easiest skills in the game to actually utilize because you don't really need to do anything but spam Pulverize until the thing is dead. And there's a lot of other buffs with Overpower, but that's the main new change here. So let's go ahead and go over the build guide, as some of the things have changed a little bit. So for starters, we can actually get a huge buff in the crit strike damage as well as critical strike chance over here, because we're going to be in the dire WereBear. We're going to get a lot more crit chance with this build, with the brand new updated Scythe Talons basically getting double its stats. There's a lot of buffs here where if I mouse over, they may not show, but I'll kind of explain them because the update just came out. So for starters, let's go ahead and go over the skills, as it's pretty simple. The skills in the bar, you don't need to activate any of the green ones. All you need to do is turn into the dire WereBear, and then you only have two options. You either Pulverize or you break crowd controls with Trample. That's it. It's the easiest build in the entire game. If you want to clear pit 100, I don't think that there is an easier build realistically that does this, because even with Necromancer, while that is an easier build, well, you still have to be kind of active in some of the skills that you're activating, whether it is cursing with Decrepify or whatever. This is by far the easiest pit 100 build. You're just going to go up and slam. Now, just to keep things realistic, the main problem that Druid and Sorcerers have in the game, and why they are so far behind in a lot of different like tier lists and stuff, is simply just because the boss battles are really long. Whereas some of the trash mobs, I mean, they are much easier to deal with these number buffs, but the boss just has a bunch of HP. But even with, again, not the most perfect gear, you can easily do pit 100 with this build. So for starters, let's go ahead and go over the skills and how we would use them. So again, the green skills, you don't really need to activate them at all. If you want to push even higher with this build, you can manually activate Poison Creeper, but in the dire WereBear, you're locked to basically WereBear skills only. But I made the build also include Poison, and the reason why we have to include Poison is Envenom is the best thing in the game for Druid. It just gives you too much of a multiplier to skip out on. So for starters, you just activate Pulverize for damage, you turn into Grizzly Rage, and again, Trample. That's it. Like the other skills you don't need to activate. As far as our Spirit Boons, so we are running Deer, which is basically in every build. Scythe Talons, because it got a doubled increase. You could go for swooping attacks for extra attack speed, but this build hits so dang hard. That's not really the problem with the build. The problem with the build is really just at the boss, but extra crit strike damage can help out a little bit. Also, I am missing a ring for vulnerability procs, which will significantly help out the build. So if you can get that, it'll make the bossing a lot smoother. Otherwise, you have to run a Cursed Touch and drop Shepherds, which if you're playing Druid, yeah, Shepherd is still required. Next up, we have Calamity, so we get to extend the duration of our ultimate. So that's going to be how we upkeep in the dire WereBear form for 100% of the time. And then we have Obsidian Slam that got a buff. It's not every 20th kill. It is now changed to every 10th kill you get this buff. Now, on top of that, let's go over the gear now. So as far as the gear goes, ideally you want to get a Harlequin Crest, and then you can run Ballistic for even more damage. You can also run Shepherds for more damage. Undying Aspect is okay here. You can run a lot of different things in this category if you want. You can get extra dodge, just kind of up to you on what you want to actually get, because all of our damage reduction, unfortunately for Druid, there's not like a, oh, you just take less damage if you are in a certain form, with the exception of the Werewolf. But with WereBear, there isn't just like damage reduction. And then we are running concussive strikes for even more damage, more crowd control, and then we're running the shockwave aspect in our two-handed staff or axe, but technically you can run a mace too. It doesn't really matter too much because all of them you will be benefiting from. And then we have the aspect of the rampaging WereBear, so we can stay in the Grizzly Rage for pretty much the whole game. And then we're running Ursine Horror, so Pulverize is now an Earth skill, and then we run Ring of Starless Skies because it got a buff. Now, if you don't have Ring of the Starless Skies, this build is still playable. Same thing with Harlequin. You could just run a Godslayer if you happen to have that. That'll be excellent. And you don't run an offhand because you run a two-handed, because Shockwave aspect, you definitely want it to be in your two-handed. As far as other things to look out for, it's kind of like the generic things that you would want in any Diablo build. Your ranks to whatever skill. In our case, it's going to be Pulverize. You can look at getting attack speed, critical strike chance, crit damage. Those are all really good because you want to be able to get a lot of crit chance, because in the Rampaging WereBear, we can get up to 200 bonus to our critical strike damage, which is great because in Venom, we'll make that go even further. So there is a pit tier 100 done in just a couple minutes. It's relatively fast. Like, this build is actually quite fast. Until you get to the boss, it might take like a minute or two, just to keep, again, expectations realistic. But there's not really too many builds, with the exception of maybe like the Flay Rupture Barb that will just delete the boss in like, 5 seconds. But for the most part, it's a very fun build and easy to gear, as there's not really like a thing that you need to get that is hard to get with this. If you want to run this as a leveling build, that's totally fine as well, which I mentioned before when we covered this build before the update. But I want to show you guys after the update, because some people were like, dude, it's not going to be that good. 76% damage increase is, again, compared to anything else in the game, as far as the patch notes go, nothing got this big of a numerical change. And now we're doing a lower pit. So we just did a 100, and now this is like a 79. But basically, what you want to try to look out for, if you can get like some resource cost reduction, that'd be very nice to get in your two-handed. And then Ring of Starless Skies, if you don't have this, you also may want to roll resource cost reduction, as well as getting the thing to roll on just one of the affixes, resource cost reduction. That will actually improve on the ability to kind of spam on the boss, because in the boss, you kind of need to move around anyway, so don't worry too much if you're not able to sit there spamming on the boss, just to make sure that you guys understand how to play the build, because you will run out of resources on the boss if you just sit there. But again, most of the time there's some sort of mechanic you gotta dodge it, because, well, that's just the way that they've designed these bosses. It's not for you to sit in front of it and just face tank everything. Although this build is relatively tanky, you still don't want to sit in a bunch of different freezes and stuff, just like any other Diablo build. But yeah, crit strike chance, crit damage, all that stuff is good. And one thing that is really important that I do not have in the gameplay here is chance to make enemies vulnerable for X amount of duration. That can be in your amulet, your gloves, or in your rings. That is a very nice thing to have that will significantly improve your boss killing time, because while we do have the exploit glyph to just basically just slam and just kill things very, very fast for millions and millions of damage, well, once the boss comes out, you're not going to kill the boss in those 2 seconds or 3 seconds that exploit will activate. So you need some other source of vulnerability. If you wanted to throw in a curse touch, that could be an option. As much as I love shepherds, what I've noticed is because the pets will take too much damage, the pets will simply just die. So that could be perhaps an option, especially if you go higher tiers in the pit, as I'm pretty confident that I can do a 110 with this if I really tried to min-max. A lot of my stuff was just in the first tier of masterworking, and if we go all the way to the 3rd tier, yeah, this build I think could do way, way better. Now, is it going to be the best build in the game? Honestly, that's still going to be reserved for a barbarian, but it's a very, very good build. But just going over anything that's important here, ideally in the chest piece, if you can get greater affix spirit per second, just in one, either your boots or your chest piece, that can significantly help out, as you need some sort of resource on the boss. The rest of the stuff, because you can kill stuff so fast, even at pit 100, your resource doesn't really become a problem at all. And then if you want to, for your emeralds, or for your weapons, you can put in emeralds here, and then for our chest piece, we can put in rubies or any of the defensive armors, and then just resistance cap out. It's pretty easy to cap out on the Druid, and if you need to throw in a skull here or there, you may need to roll armor on something, so you can actually upkeep your armor at 9,230. But if you really want to focus in on overpower, there were a few different buffs to overpower on the skill tree, and if you want to run rubies, that is an option. I personally always prefer to run the crit, because you can easily get like 80-90 crit in this, because you can roll your crit strike chance or earth damage in your other categories for one of the tempering slots. But as far as the skill tree goes, this is what we are running. So the first 2 points don't matter. Then we're getting extra damage over here, more spirit. And then it doesn't show it here, but with the new bonus with Raging Pulverize, what we are able to do is actually get another 30x multiplier on overpower. And since there's a lot of different overpowers that can activate more frequently, well, that's just simply more damage. And then over here, we're getting extra crit strike chance as well as extra damage reduction. I only needed 1 point. You may need to put 2 points into the Ancestral Fortitude. It depends how are your rolls on your resistances, but you may actually need 0 points in this. Check your resistances, and if you need to put 1 or 2 points, or even 3, that's totally fine. Don't worry about it. And then Nature's Reach over here, extra damage. If you want to remove this, that's fine, because in the boss, well, things don't really get staggered as fast as, let's say, the Heartseeker Rogue, because, well, this build doesn't attack super fast, but it hits like a truck, and it kind of fulfills that fantasy of like a big damage bear, and I like it. It's awesome. Being able to stay in ultimate form is great. And then we can run Mending for extra HP over here, which also gives you extra healing, but there's another thing. Again, there's a lot of changes that aren't updated on the build websites. And then just more damage over here, and then this is important, you need to max out in Venom. Even though it shows a picture of a wolf, we still get poison here because it's kind of required in every Druid build. And then I went ahead and dropped Resonance and in favor of putting Defensive Posture. So this also got a brand new updated buff, and what it does is it's going to grant you extra DR, damage reduction, when you are fortified. And because the way that Grizzly Rage works, we will be 100% fortified every single second. We just gain 8%, and this will actually increase the amount of fortification we gain, giving about like 10-ish% here, and we will be able to maintain fortification the whole time we're playing, as it is a part of how the overpower works. And when we take less damage, we do more damage with one of the Paragon board nodes. So now that we went over the skill tree, let's go ahead and hop into the Paragon board. So as far as the Paragon board goes, we're going to be starting off on Exploit, and I'll make it a little bit larger so you guys can see. But you'll see in the gameplay, especially if you're doing like open world content, some of the objectives for some of like the events, I'm literally one-shotting them solo. This build does a huge amount of damage, but open world content is pretty easy at this point anyways. But I want to say the new like benchmark that I would say is kind of for like good builds now after this update, since everything kind of got buffed, is going to be about Pit 100. So this build very good, and we're going to go ahead and pop one of the little like mine cages here so we can get extra cinders, because I need to get more of the Angel Breath. That thing is just, it's a pain to go ahead and grind. But let's go ahead and make this a little bit larger so you guys can see. So starter board, we're running Exploit. Then we move into the second board, which is Fang and Claw. And then we do want to pick up this as well. And then we are going to be moving into Earthen Devastation. And we definitely want to make sure that we hit that X40. So you do need some rolls potentially on your damage to crowd control bonus. So I made the build as beginner friendly as possible, and most people will hit this without really even trying, because there's so much damage to crowd control, and we get the bonus thing over here to increase the magic nodes. So it's going to be pretty easy to hit it. You'll get usually about 35. You may need to roll it on like one piece of gear, or if you happen to have a staff, it's pretty easy to max out on that. And then next we go into Constricting Tendrils. So this is where it gets a little bit interesting. If you want to play another source of poison, that is an option. However, you need to apply poison because Envenom is really important on Druid. It just gives you so much damage. You can't really skip out on it. Heck, I was even thinking about trying to fit in Heightened Malice. If you could fit in Heightened Malice into this, you could, in theory, get way more damage. Now, the main problem that if you do decide to go this route, unless the boss is the shaman boss at the very end, your clear speed is going to be so much worse. But this is technically another great option if you want to like just one-shot things, or technically what would happen is you'd have to activate one attack, it apply the poison, and then you go in for your second one. Maybe we can mix it in with Andariel's, once Andariel's, I believe it's bugged right now. I just dropped a build guide for that, and then apparently it's having some like bug issues, but nonetheless it could be something to consider in the future, although it's kind of harder to scale Dariel's with the Druid versus, let's say, other classes in the game like Sork or even Rogue or even heck Barb. But Barb hasn't enough builds at this point. But next up we're getting Spirit here, but I just wanted to mention this because I think it is kind of interesting. If you did want to go ahead and play this, you could get some pretty insane amounts of damage with that in addition. So anyways, after the fifth board, which again was Spirit on Heightened Malice, we are going to be going down to the final one over here, which is going to be Survival Instincts, which is the, while in WereBear form, you get to do increased damage. And this is supposed to kind of help out with bosses, especially with even Grizzly Rage, where the longer that you're in the WereBear form, the Grizzly Rage form, you essentially get more and more damage, and then once the boss gets, lower and lower in HP, you're supposed to be able to get way more damage. I'm not sure if this is bugged or what, but it just doesn't seem like it's just giving you that crazy amount of damage here. Now, another thing I want to mention for optional things at the very bottom of the skill tree over here, Bestial Rampage is going to give you the most damage. If you need some hybrid HP / damage, Earthsign Strength can be very good. If you're having resource problems, Earth and Might can be good. But as far as the key passive, the reason why I kept it for the very end, it's kind of up to you, and it's kind of how your gear is. Do you have enough resource cost reduction? If you're running into resource problems, Earth and Might can be good maybe in the earlier stages, up until you get resources to be not a problem, but still getting 100% potential crits is not bad at all, and this would help out a little bit with resource when you are fighting the boss. But again, usually with the boss, you attack, you move, you attack, and you'll be pretty much a-okay if you have Ring of Starless Skies or any sort of resource cost reduction. But Earthsign Strength is another great option. If you want to get way more HP, technically more HP also equals more damage, but there is a limit to the X50 on the last node over here. Wish this had like no limit to go to like 100, and then I think we could actually see the WereBear deal a lot more damage, because even though we got a bunch of different buffs, and there's a bunch of different buffs over here, if you want to run extra attack speed, that actually got a 50% numerical change as well, so that's kind of nice. But overall, this is a really fun build, and again, try it out. It is so smooth for its gameplay. At the Pit 100. If you really want to push even higher with this, you can definitely do it. Again, I had mediocre gear because I'm a content creator that likes to try all builds out, and this is just something I threw together, and I had a lot of fun with it. But easy, 2-skill build. If you maybe want to share this with your friend that wants to try out something new and they're not a very good player, this is going to be great because it's so easy. You legit cannot mess this build up in terms of like your rotation or anything. It's just smash again and again with Pulverize, and you'll be good to go. But that's going to wrap things up. If you guys enjoyed the video, drop a like on it. If you're new here and want to see updates to potentially this build, if we discover anything new, and we might actually go for the rank 1 push with this build, as I think it is actually quite achievable with the most recent buffs. I think it's possible to go ahead and do the maximum, which at the moment is a 105, and I think we can confidently get rank 1 with this build for specifically the Pulverize with this infinite Grizzly Rage build. But anyways, take care, and I'll catch you guys in the next video. And if you have any questions, let me know down below, and in the pin will be the planner.